I'm Blane Upstone, owner of Blane George Carpentry, and I previously went to Morrell College. So when I started at Morrell College, I started with a level 2 apprenticeship in bench joinery. So that was 2 years long. And then after that, I went into a level 3 apprenticeship in site carpentry. So when I completed my apprenticeship, I continued on at the company I was at for about 3 years. And then last year, I went self-employed. I'm here at Morrell College today, and I'm teaching the level 2 joiners how to do a worktop joint. So I'm Blane, 24 years old, and now run my own carpentry company. So I started off like you guys, are you all joinery or all carpentry as well? Carpentry as well, yes. I started off in bench joinery and then moved into site carpentry after the 2 years and then went self-employed last year. So we mainly do like fitted furniture, kitchens, that type of thing. So obviously if you're looking to go into kitchens, obviously worktops are essential. Even if you don't do sort of the laminate as much, then it's definitely useful. So have any of you done a worktop joint or been in the presence of one doing it at work? Yeah? Yes, obviously just to kind of run through the basics. So this is set up for a mason's mitre. So you have the female joint and the male joint. So that basically just allows you to join them together. Look at the jig here. Obviously you have your different measurements. I've measured that worktop and that's 600mm deep. So obviously you see here, it has all these indents for the measurements. Obviously I've put the plug on the 600 measurement because obviously that is what the worktop is. Obviously they differ. Sometimes you might have a 616, 635. So you kind of just look at them and just see what it is in comparison to the measurement. These are for the dog bolts. So what these essentially do is on the underside of your joint, you will obviously put the plugs in. That will sit on there, and then obviously you route all these out. So what they do is one part that joins onto the other part, and then obviously you crank that either with the rattler or a spanner. And what that essentially does is tightens the joint. So obviously you can't see any of that from the underside, which basically, just makes it a much stronger joint. Yeah, so if we go through and just obviously have a look at this. So yeah, we've got the female joint markings, and you flip it, obviously you've got the other markings on there. Let's say that's for any radius tops. So yeah, if we so we've measured that already, and we've got our 600mm top. Yes, this is a similar setup. Mine's just obviously a bit more simple. Obviously mine doesn't have the radius corners on like that. So obviously if you see here, similar to that, it's just got M3. It's got all the M's, which obviously for your male joint, which is basically the same as that. And then same again, it's just got all the holes for the dog bolts. So yeah, if we just set that up. So again, we've got our 600 mark on here. So if we set up for the male joint, so we've got ours there on the M, which obviously for the male joint, and then we'll clip that on at our 600. So that basically hooks on there. You might have to have a little move about with it and just see what you find most comfortable. So we've hooked that on there. That is on there. And now the main thing with this is obviously when you set up for your clamps, you obviously don't want them in the way of the router. Set these up like so. The best practice obviously just to keep these so the long part of the clamp is obviously on the bottom, so there's less chance of hitting it. So yeah, and then when we set this, if we go, obviously you see this has different pins, so you can switch this. Obviously one's higher, one's lower. So if we go to the lowest and then just set this just below the worktop. Obviously you don't want to do all this in one pass because it will just be too much for the cutter. So what we do want to do is just do this in a few passes. Now, similar to any kind of 1/2 inch router, you have this point which locks it off. So if you put that on and turn that, that'll lock it, that can't move. So then we know this point is just underneath our worktop. So what we want to do is basically just go through with a few passes. So if we fire up the hoover, obviously you get a bit of eye protection on, and then if we just check that we're happy to kind of do this in sort of about 3 passes usually. You can do a little bit more, you can do a little bit less. It's all up to you really, but yeah, I would definitely recommend a couple of passes. Get that on, get the eye protection on. Now you always want to clear this bit. So yeah, if we just kind of check that. Sometimes you find the router does tend to jump a little bit. So what you really want to do is obviously just kind of check the line, and then you might have to run it back after. So yeah, if we go for that. Remember, it's always important, let the router finish before you take it out, because I've done that before where the cutter's still spinning and you can sometimes catch it on there and obviously it'll make it jump. So yeah, again with this, it's just important to just take your time and just make sure you're obviously not taking too much out. And then whatever way so obviously the blade is spinning this way. So it's spinning against the cut. The last thing you want to do is obviously put it the wrong way, because what you'll find is, especially on these veneer and laminates, if the cutter is spinning the wrong way, what will happen is it's actually, at this point in the joint, it'll actually end up flicking the veneer off. And obviously if you spent a lot on the worktops, it's a bit of a nightmare to replace, and it's going to end up costing you money. So yeah, if you always just check which way the router's spinning, another pass, I think that should do it. So yeah, again, we'll just clean this little bit out. So yeah, that's almost there. Just don't think my cutter was quite deep enough. So we'll just give it another little pass just to kind of clean the bottom bit of edge off. The easiest way to remember which way the male is obviously the male joint protrudes out, whereas the female joint goes in. But if you just check, if you come over in here and just check the joint, you obviously see that kind of curves round. I just need to set the depth just a touch lower. But you can see obviously as the cutter's spinning that way, if you all just come and have a little look around there, you'll see it's chipped off on that bit, which obviously doesn't matter because that is the offcut. So obviously the blade's spinning that way, so you want it travelling this way, because otherwise you have that bit of chip on the bit of board that you want, which is obviously, you know, you can either try and colour fill it or you just have to get another top because it's kind of ruined it. So yeah, as long as the cutter is spinning the right way. And you also want to listen to the router a little bit, like sometimes it will, you know, if you're under pressure or you're on price, sometimes you might have to slam it through and just hope for the best. But you know, you kind of want to listen to the router. Obviously, if you've got a good cutter in it, you kind of want, you just want to listen to it. And obviously, if it's you know, making a lot of rattle, it's making a lot of noise, you're probably thinking, oh, I've took a little bit too much out. So yeah, you just kind of want to do it just a few passes at a time. I usually go for about 3. But yeah, obviously see the male joint, and then what I usually do after is, because sometimes the rat it can judder a little bit. Obviously, if you take too much, you just want to do just another pass, literally when that's all gone through, and what that essentially do is basically just creates a nice straight line. Because especially on these dark worktops, when you join 2 together, what tends to happen is obviously if it's rattled a little bit, then by the time the 2 joints go together, you just see like a little hairline, which isn't too bad, but obviously you're trying to get it perfect, you're trying to get it bang on. You want to use as little kind of colour fill as possible. You're trying to get the joints right. I'm sure you guys have heard enough of me talking. You want to kind of get on and give it a go yourself. So yeah, as long as you take your time, you get these set up right. Obviously that one's got a few more things on it than mine. But it's the same kind of thing really. Yeah, as long as you always set this up on the right one, all you got to remember is, your F is for your female, and then obviously your M is for your male joint. So if you guys get yourself set up, obviously if you need help setting up the cutters and what cutters to use and how deep to go, then yeah, we can get that sorted. But yeah, if you all want to have a little go, and then yeah, we'll see how it's looking. Cool, yeah? No problem.
The worst thing you can do as well is if you're cutting from the other side and you've got the laminate face down, if you want to leave sort of 5mm, something like that to pass through, but if you leave it too thin or you don't quite go through enough, there's a tendency for that, especially because sometimes you might have quite a big bit hanging over. In that case, you're better off cutting it off with a circular saw or something just to reduce that, because if that falls off and you've got the laminate facing down, it chips all the back out again, and you don't see it until it's too late because you've got it upside down, you've gone through, you think, spending ages getting the joint right, you turn it back over and you go, oh no, there's chips in the back. So, you ready with that, buddy? Stick your glasses on. And so as you come through, just remember, because again, on a site situation, you've probably got a little bit more room around the backside, you haven't got the bench in the way. So as you come through, you might want to just twist the handles slightly just to come past the clamp. When you get to the end, turn the power off, lift it up, and you can lift it out. One little tip as well I would always check, and I know that it would have been you setting that up originally with the router cutter in there, but there's usually a line on the router cutter, which you've all probably seen. Always double check that before you do that next pass, because I've known them creep out before, and sometimes it's just the collet is worn or the bit's worn, and if you get one of those flying across the room, it's very dangerous. So who's going to do the final pass then? Although it was originally set, if we just double check that now, we'll come all the way through. Don't worry about the sacrificial piece underneath. It's always good to have a bit of board underneath or something. Cut into it. Don't worry about that. It's there for a reason. If you slide the router a little bit further towards the workpiece, yeah, so what's probably happened there is that's probably come loose. So, because that's just on a screw thread, you see. So, but that's why it's good checking, see, because sometimes it will hold it. Yeah, but what you have is you have a fine adjustment, which is this one. This one moves up and down, and this is your finer adjustment. So that probably just got, so you can actually adjust it there, but I'd wind that screw right in that fine adjustment. You only want to be doing the last few mil. So that's more if you were doing like in a minute, if they do the bolt cuts on there, you might just need that couple of mil just to, because trying to slide this up and down isn't always the most accurate. I'll let you reset that now. So if you plunge down till you're deep enough, lock it off, and then you can set that depth stop again. So you plunge down till you're, again, that might just want to come up a little, you want to go down a little bit more. Make sure give yourself a couple of mil into the workpiece below. And that, yeah, you might need to do a little adjustment on there. What I would do, you see, is give it a bit too high. Yeah. Don't worry about adjusting that yet. You drop that right down, so that's going through, lock that off. Now, you haven't got to try and hold anything to mess around. You can now just adjust that now. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. So you haven't got to try and hold that down at the level and screw that up. So once you feel comfortable that's cutting through into the workpiece below, which it is, yeah, you can then set your depth stop again. But that was quite a good thing that happened, really, because it shows you in the real world, you might set that and go, that's perfect, brilliant. But you never know, someone might pick that tool up, they might adjust it, it might just come loose like that did. Sometimes it's just worth checking it, because especially on a bit of worktop that range from, some of them are cheap, like 100 quid, but some of them can go up to 400, 500, 600 quid a length. And if you're cutting 4 joints on those, it only takes you to do one wrong, doesn't it? And it costs a lot of money. So if you want to go through the final pass. Excellent, perfect. So if we all come and have a little look and see if we're happy with the joint, but before we take that off, because that's now set where we want it, we know exactly where it's been set. Before we take that off, Blane made a good point about checking that you're all happy with that. So, Jay, just hold for a minute. Can you come have a look at that and see if you're happy with that? There's a bit of a shoulder, isn't there? So all that is the router's just moved away from the fence. Nothing wrong with that. That's the idea of it. That's why we're cutting this way, so it'll push away. So that needs another pass through, doesn't it? So we'll set that back down again, put the last pass through. That's why we don't touch those clamps yet, till you had a look at the joint. And Blane made a very good point about checking that through, didn't he? Making sure that you're happy with it. Because if we take that apart now, and we try and put that back on in the same place, it will never go back exactly where you want it to go. So if we do that again, ideally we'd have a dust extraction set on these, but some of the routers, can you see how low that's going? The dust extractor gets in the way. So ideally we would have, you know, someone holding the dust extractor on there, or we'd be wearing a proper... I'll let you check that now and see if you're happy with that. Is that better? Yeah. You guys will have a look as well, just so you can see the difference on that step line. And did you hear it when it caught? All it is because there's a little bit of play on the collet deliberately, and it's pushing you away from the workpiece, which is what you want it to do, because you don't want to be digging in, and because that's when the jig start moving, isn't it? So I think that's a good job, lads. So all we need to do is take the clamps off.
So what we're doing the mason's mitre joints on kitchen worktops. Okay, so if you've got a right angle corner to fit, this is how we're going to go about jointing the two worktops together. What we're doing at the moment, this is the male part of the joint, so there's always going to be male and female. This is the male joint. All right? So we're using this jig along with 1/2 inch router. That cutter is always, you've got to have a 12.7mm cutter. You haven't necessarily got to remember that, because if ever you go and buy now, you just buy a worktop cutter, but they are 12.7mm. If for some reason you put in a different size cutter, it's not going to work. It's not going to be, you know, it's not going to give you a perfect kind of right angle, because it will be following a slightly different shape. So what we've said that we'll do, these worktops are 38mm thick. We're going to make a number of passes to sort of make that cut. Drop it down around 3 or 4mm at a time. All right, so we've gone so far with it. Now the way the simplest way of kind of adjusting it to a further 3 or 4mm is on this depth gauge here. We're just going to open that up so we've got that clearance between that bolt and the pin of around about 3 or 4mm. Okay. Once we've got that, we'll move that back, unlock it, drop it down to where we've just marked. So that now has gone down another 3 or 4mm than what it was previously. All right. And all we're going to do, I mean, I'll let you have a go at using this now. Each of us going to kind of have a pass on it. We're just going to follow this jig round. That guide bush there enables us to follow that jig perfectly. We have got to make sure, because there's a tiny bit of play in there, okay, that we're always keeping it to that left-hand side. All right? As we're going round, keep the pressure tight to there. All right? So you should find now, as you do this, and we'll have the vacuum running at the same time, wear these as well, that'd be handy. It should go down another 3 or 4mm. I reckon another couple of passes and we'll be all the way through it. Then we'll look at the next joint. Okay, you happy with that? One part of the joint's got to be cut from the underside, otherwise the laminate will be broken out on the front edge. As you can see on this waist side here, because the cutter is revolving in the clockwise direction, it's cutting in on that side, which is what we want. But here, it's sort of cutting out, and you can see how that breaks the laminate out on that front edge. So if we'd have done that as kind of for the main part of the joint, that's the finish that we would have. So obviously we're trying to avoid that. That's why the other part of the joint, the female one, we'll flip the worktop over and do it from the underneath. All right. Right, Hugh, do you want to have a little look at this then? Yeah. Remember, we're just going to move it up 3, 4mm. That depth gauge, just so we've got a clearance between the bolt there and the pin of around about 4mm. It doesn't matter, to me, it doesn't matter how many passes you have to make. Even if you did it a couple of mil at a time, you're going to get a far better, smoother kind of finish on it. When you're starting it, make sure you're not actually touching the worktop, so pull it back a little bit. Right. And then just follow that jig round. What you don't want to do is kind of have it, the cutter touching the worktop when we start it, because sometimes it can kick back and you've kind of lost a bit of control of it. I mean, you've got to be patient with these jobs, because if you end up trying to rush it because you push for time or whatever, and you put a little nick in there in the edge of the worktop, that's job's finished. So you end up having to replace the worktop. So it's better to take your time, make sure everything's going smoothly and not causing any damage to anything.